In mid-March of 2020, the words COVID-19 and pandemic were still new, but we realized that what had become before had changed dramatically, maybe forever, and we did not yet know what was coming next. That is liminal space, that uncomfortable place between what was and what will be. And most of us try to get out of it as quickly as we can. But what if we didn't? Hey, friends. Welcome to From the Threshold. I am Renee Hill, and each Saturday I come to you from my own front porch, my literal threshold, to offer you a moment of reflection for anybody navigating a creative life. It's not a tutorial or a checklist, but instead my hope is that this becomes a place where you can reconnect with your own creative story with a little more insight and compassion. Wherever you're listening from, I am so glad you're here. Last week, we wrapped up a series on Limina's creative core values. In August, we're going to begin a new exploration, a month-long reflection on transitions. So when I sat down to think about what today's episode was going to be, I realized that I was in a space between series, not what was and not quite what's next, a threshold. And it felt like the perfect time to share the story behind the name of this company, Limina Creative. In 2019, I attended a creative conference. I think it was 2019. I attended several of them in a row. It was here in Nashville. It was called Story Gathering. It's not your typical conference. No hotel ballrooms or PowerPoint marathons. It's immersive, theatrical, intentionally designed to stir something awake in you. You don't just sit and take notes. You walk through full-scale installations. You breathe in themes before you hear them spoken. You feel them in your body. That year, the theme was liminal space. I had never heard that term before, but the moment they defined it, the space between no longer and not yet, something inside me responded. I didn't know there was a name for that quiet ache between chapters, that uncertain moment after an ending, but before a new beginning. But I had lived it. We all have. That was the power of that gathering, not just in the artistry or atmosphere, but in the way it gave language to something that we all feel, but we almost never name. That weekend, I sat in our Nashville Symphony Hall, surrounded by dancers and poets and storytellers and dreamers. And I realized that this space that we try so hard to escape from is incredibly important. And that stayed with me. So much so that when I named this company, when I built this work, I named it Limina, after the threshold, after that place between. Because what I learned that weekend wasn't just a definition, it was a whole new way of seeing the in-between spaces. We live in a world that worships clarity, that asks us to name our goals, define our brand, know our 5-year plan. A culture that tells us if you are uncertain, you're going to get run over. If you're uncomfortable, then something is obviously wrong. And if you're in between, you better hurry up and move through it. We see it everywhere in the way we expect new mothers to bounce back before they've even healed, in the pressure to find silver linings before the grief has had time to settle, and in how we treat laziness. I'm sorry. As you know, I'm sitting on my porch and I just got sidetracked by a bluebird flying in front of me. In the pressure to find silver linings before the grief has had time to settle, in how we treat rest like laziness and reinvention like a failure of direction, and in how we put ridiculously short timelines on personal grief and loss. But what if that's a framing of our lives that does more harm than good? What if there's nothing wrong with the in-between? What if the spaces that we are trying so hard to push through are actually full of meaning and value? Liminal spaces are not always seismic. They don't always come with fireworks and celebrations. Sometimes they're much smaller thresholds. They shift from summer into the school year, for instance, the pause between ending work and stepping into family time every evening, the breath before a conversation that could change something, the moment you let go of a relationship or a schedule or responsibility or a place without knowing what comes next. We move through these transitions every day, sometimes without noticing, sometimes aching for resolutions, and sometimes holding our breath. But these are not empty spaces, and they deserve our attention. Liminal space is a threshold, the place between what was and what's next. It's the moment after something has ended and before the new beginning has taken shape. It is by nature disorienting. You can't go back, but you don't quite know how to go forward yet either. You're untethered from what used to be true and unsure what truth is forming instead. Grief and hope mingled together, confusion and potential side by side. We don't enjoy the feelings of disorientation and uncertainty that liminal space brings, and yet this is where growth and transformation begin. Excuse me. It's been one of those days. I just finished another live and it happened all the whole time. Anthropologists call it the liminal phase, from the Latin limen meaning threshold. It's why my company is named Limina Creative and why I do my lives from my literal threshold. If you imagine standing and knocking on a door, that feeling of not being in your own space and not quite sure what's going to happen when the door opens, that's the idea. You have to step over that threshold, that strip of wood or metal or stone that runs across the bottom of a doorway. That's what a threshold is. And you have to cross it before you can get to what's inside waiting for you. Arnold van Gennep, who coined the term, said that all human transitions, birth, marriage, loss, identity shifts, all follow the same rhythm: separation, transition, reintegration. We leave something behind, we cross through a threshold, and we emerge changed. Victor Turner, decades later, picked up that idea and added something beautiful to it: communitas. He noticed that in these in-between moments, when the normal rules of society fall away, we often find our kind of a raw connection, not structured or polished, but shared, deep, and equal. A campfire felling, a circle, the sense of we're in this together, even if we don't know exactly what this is yet. And then came Homi Bhabha, who didn't just talk about people changing, but cultures too. He called it the third space, a place where old identities blur and new ones begin to form. A place where differences are not erased, but woven together into something else, something new. A place of tension and invention. I'm telling you this not to give you a lecture, but because sometimes when we feel stuck or strange or off course, what we really are is in a liminal space. That's an important moment, a pause in the rhythm of becoming, a clearing, a hush, a hallway where something true is taking shape. And that hallway, that space between what was and what's next, is exactly where creativity lives. Creativity is a liminal practice. It's not just about producing beautiful things. It's about crossing unseen thresholds again and again, and being willing to stand in that uncertain middle long enough for something to emerge. Whether it's something interesting, beautiful, or unusual, or heart-wrenching, every creative act is a doorway, from blank page to first line, from fabric to form, from canvas to image. We don't always know what we're making when we begin. We don't always know what part of us will show up, but we step in anyway. We listen and we wait and we stay curious. And that's the posture of liminal creativity. We like to think that creativity happens in moments of inspiration, when everything clicks, when we're all lit up, when we're sure. And it does, sometimes. But most of the time, It happens in the not knowing, in the days when we doubt what we're making, when we scrap it all and begin again, when the voice is quiet and the progress is slow, and we are tempted to walk away. But the artists who keep showing up, they're the ones who have learned to stay in that space in between, to let themselves be undone and remade by the process, to work with their hands even when their vision is fuzzy, to trust that something is forming even if they can't yet name it. Because liminal space is where form takes shape, not instantly, not effortlessly, but through practice and presence and attention. It's where we meet ourselves in ways that we did not expect, where we access ideas that we couldn't think our way into, where something unconscious or sacred or alive breaks through. This is why the creative life can feel vulnerable and even fragile, because it asks us to live without guarantees, to hold space for what isn't finished, to believe in something that does not exist yet. But it's also what makes it powerful. The creative process teaches us how to be with uncertainty without collapsing, how to wait with reverence, how to become fluent in transformation. And the more we practice this in our creative life, the more we learn to live it elsewhere. When we learn to stay with the messy middle of a project, we slowly build the muscle to stay with the messy middle of a hard conversation. When we can face the unknown on a canvas or a journal, we become more able to face the unknown in any season of transition. Creative practice doesn't just make art, it makes capacity. It helps us hold what's unresolved without needing to force an answer. It helps us remember that growth doesn't always feel like clarity. More often, it feels like being in between. Liminal space is not a one-time thing. It is not just for the big life events or reinventions. It's woven into the rhythm of every creative life. We cross creative thresholds all the time. Each time we begin something new, a project, a journal, a sketch, an idea, a stitch, we step out of the known and we step into possibility. Each time we return to something left behind, we pass through the threshold of doubt and decide that it's still worth making. Each time we finish something, there's a letting go, a pause, a space before the next beginning has shown up. The creative life moves in cycles. Start, lose your way, come back, discover something unexpected, and begin again. And every part of that rhythm is important. The blank page and the breakthrough, the silence and the spark, the lostness and the learning. Threshold after threshold. We are not failing when we lose our footing. We are not behind when we are unsure. We are just mid-passage, still forming, still becoming. So if you find yourself in that place again, that place of not knowing where to go next, or what the work is doing, or who you are as a maker, know this: you have been here before, and you will be here again. It is not a detour, it is the path. And every time you pass through, you will bring more of yourself with you. So this is why liminal space matters, why it's worth naming, worth noticing, and worth staying in, even when everything inside of us wants to move on. Because this space, this unsettled, uncomfortable, unfinished space is where the transformation happens. It's where the old identity loosens its grip and something truer has room to take shape. It's where creativity gets honest, where our previous comfortable habits no longer work, and we have to dig deeper and start listening. It's where we unlearn what no longer fits and imagine new possibilities. But none of that happens if we rush through it, if we numb it, or escape it, or ignore it, or push it away before it has a chance to speak. We need these in-between spaces. They are the compost for what's coming next. They are the fire that softens what's rigid in us and the dark from which seeds begin to sprout. And if we can learn to trust them, to trust ourselves in them, then liminal space becomes something else entirely. Not just something to survive, to get through, but something to grow in. So the next time you find yourself in a liminal space, whether it's a major life change or just a quiet shift that's barely visible from the outside, pause. Name it for what it is: a threshold, a space that isn't empty, but full of possibility. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to know what it means. You don't have to rush towards clarity just to escape the discomfort. But you can learn to stay, maybe just a little longer than you would have before. You might begin to ask, what am I in the process of releasing? What hasn't yet begun, but I can feel kind of quietly stirring? What part of me wants to move on, and what part of me is asking to linger here just a little while longer? What can I learn? What do I see here around me right now that might be important? And who do I want to be? If you're making something, a quilt, a book, a decision, or a new way of being, and it feels unclear, unsteady, and unfinished, that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that that's where all good work begins, in the ambiguity, in the between. The creative life is not about mastering the path. It's about learning to walk it with intention. And that includes the slow part and the fuzzy parts, the parts that ask more questions than they answer. So the next time you're tempted to rush the in-between, what if you didn't? What if you treated it as the most important part? Because that moment, that pause, that stretch between what was and what's next is a threshold, and it's not asking you for performance. It's simply asking you for presence. This discussion about liminal space was born out of a desire to explain the name Limina Creative, but it is also the perfect tee-up for the next series, Transitions. The shifts we see coming and the ones that catch us off guard, the endings that we choose and the ones that we never wanted, those spaces where something is changing. We're not sure we are inside of it yet. And how do we handle those places? And how does it affect our creativity? In August, I'll be testing. In August, I'll be testing a new rhythm here at Limina, a way to walk through each theme more intentionally, with a little more depth and more support. So every month, has a theme, I'm going to offer the following: a 30-day creative journal with prompts, reflections, and space to explore the theme in your own rhythm. And those will be available hopefully on my website, definitely on Amazon. Also, a mini creative workshop to dive deeper into the topic with stories and creativity and guidance. And of course, these Saturday reflections, quiet time together with you and me on the threshold to hold space as you make and become. They'll all be built around the same theme. So if you're in the middle of a transition or you want to be better prepared for the next one, I invite you to join me in August. I'm going to be off next Saturday, taking a small break, a small pause in this rhythm, but we will begin the full cycle the following week. If you would like to explore this new rhythm with me, you can find the Transitions Journal starting on August 1st at liminacreative.com or through the link in my bio on Amazon. And whether you journal or listen, join me in the workshop, or simply notice, you are invited exactly as you are, because the threshold doesn't require perfection, only presence. So in 2 weeks, if you would like to come on back here to the patio with me, I would love to have you. Until then, stay passionately curious.